Please welcome Joey Dioria. That was okay. That was okay. All right, close enough. Close enough.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Oh my. No, please, keep it down.
All right, relax. I know, local legend. You know, how could it not be? So, all right, well, welcome to Chicago. Oh no, wait, no, you're local. Welcome me to Chicago.
Yeah, welcome.
Oh, thank you. It's so glad to be here. You know, it's be back and everything else too. So, if it's okay with you, whenever I have a solo guest, I'd say let's kind of go back to the origin story. What, and not necessarily this, what drew you to being a performer?
I realized early on that I couldn't do much of anything else. And going to school, the nuns would always say to me, "Very interesting, Mr. Dioria. I'm sure you'll be very successful as an actor someday." And I went, you know, Sister Mary Frances might be right.
So that was old school, like the ruler on the hand.
Rulers on the knuckles, yes.
Oh boy.
I can still, I'm just getting the feeling back.
Working your way through all that, how did you fall into I believe the second person to wear the mantle of Bozo?
Oh, well, that is a long and sad story. I was living in Los Angeles, and I noticed your Universal Monsters lunchbox. I was working at Universal Studios as part of their makeup show, which was called Castle Dracula.
I remember that. I did not see it, but I knew of it. Famous Monsters Magazine did an article about it.
Right. I was one of the Renfields.
Oh.
And a very well-known voiceover actor, Richard Epcar, he played Dracula opposite me. We worked together quite a bit. And while I was working at Universal, I would be taking improv comedy classes at night. And one day, somebody came running in and they said, "Chuck Barris is so desperate for acts for the Gong Show, they're paying AFTRA minimum." AFTRA minimum back then was $150. That was also my rent. So I thought to myself, if I can
just this for inflation. Trust me, that's an impressive sum of money.
And I lived in Beverly Hills.
Oh, wow, okay.
I had a studio apartment in Beverly Hills, and I paid $150 a month. Great address, no money. Anyway, so I figured if I can come up with one dumb act a month, I'm solid. And I was just coming up with acts. I did one bit where I literally beat a rocking chair to splinters with an axe to the William Tell Overture. I brought out a small matchbox, which I opened up, and I had them play a recording of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir singing the Hallelujah Chorus. It was a 33 1/3, played at 78, and it was a flea, it was a trained flea orchestra and chorus. And then I came up with the act that really sealed my fate. It was called Dr. Flamo. And you can actually see this on YouTube. It was on the Gong Show. I had a board with 7 candles, little tiny ones, great big fat ones, and I would hold my hand over a different flame and scream in a different pitch, depending on the size candle, and would do Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. I won. Yes. Now, back then, getting $150 was gravy, but if you won the Gong Show, you got $1,000. Unless you wanted the trophy. If you wanted the trophy, then it was $825. They charged you for the trophy.
Oh.
And at first I thought, well, forget that. But then I thought, you know, I didn't expect to win. I'm still going to get my $150. So I said, yeah. So I have a Gong Show trophy.
Who were the judges?
The judges were Fred Travellina, J.P. Morgan.
Of course.
And Pat McCormick.
Pat McCormick!
Yes. Yes. And the funny thing is, I'm backstage waiting to go on, and there was a young lady sitting next to me. She was to go on ahead of me. She was not a very attractive girl. She'd have to work hard to get to be plain. And she just sat there and she looked at me and she said, I know I'm not attractive. And I'm like, no, you look fine. No, she says, please, I know I'm not attractive. But Barbara Streisand is not attractive, and she's a great singer. And I said, well, yes, that's true. And I am going to be a great singer. I said, well, good for you. And she got out, and she sang the big hit song of the day, which was You Light Up My Life. And she didn't hit a single note that was in that song. And they would gear up the audiences to be vicious. They were screaming, you know, kill her! I mean, I just watched this poor girl disappear in tears, and it was like, I'm glad I don't think that this is going to be any big deal for me. They'll boo me off the stage. I'll go home and collect $150. And I won. And I just stood there and I went, you like that? Barris elbows me in the ribs and goes, shut up, kid, you're a hit. So, and as a result, I did that bit several times. I did it on the Jim Neighbors variety show. And the Jim Neighbors show was very interesting. I got a job as a waiter working at a place called the Variety Arts Center, which was founded by Milt Larson, the man who founded the Magic Castle in Hollywood. And he was trying to open this club, and he was trying to get moneyed people to back it. And he brought in he was head writer on the Jim Neighbors variety show, and was bringing in people and executives and Jim Neighbors to see the place. And so I'm there, and I'm taking their order, and I got the drinks, and I'm putting the drinks down. And as I'm putting the drink down in front of Jim Neighbors, he turns to Milt and says, so what's this funny act that you're trying to find for the show? And Milt said, oh, it's a hysterical act. It's called El Flamo. I got a call into Chuck Barris trying to find it. And I went, excuse me. And all these people looked at me. I said, are you talking about the guy who burns his hand till smoke gets in your eyes? And Milt said, yes. I said, the act is called Dr. Flamo. And Milt said, do you know him? I said, sir, I am him. And he turned to Jim Neighbors and said, you see, only in Hollywood can the actor you're looking for be your waiter.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
And that was how I met Milt Larson, and I worked at the Variety Arts Center for many years.
Wow. And to put things a little bit in context for our younger people out there, there's a couple of things going on here. One, on the Gong Show thing, there was a lot of beginning talent that were going on there, doing this thing. You can see, like, Paul Rubens doing non-Pee Wee Herman stuff on the clips. And a lot of actors. A guy I worked with for years at Disney, Mike Korkus, who was the head of talent casting. He played the saw and the fiddle and stuff like that on there too. And it was just one of those. Gallagher, yeah.
Gallagher did the show.
It was one of those things. And also too, with variety acts back then, remember, there was no internet, there was no VCRs. So acts like that, you could do on a show, and then a couple months later, you do the same exact one on an entirely different show. Andy Kaufman did this he did his Elvis Foreign Man thing. He did that almost like 20 times before Johnny Carson. And once you did Johnny Carson, then everybody knew it.
And I did The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. I ended up going on I was working for Milt Larson again, and he was famous for all of the magicians he knew. And he said, the first magician does a very messy act. We need to clean the stage. He says, could you come out in front of the curtain and do the Dr. Flamo thing? I said, sure. So I came in front, and there sitting in the front row, right in front of me, was Jim McCulley, who was Carson's casting director.
Yes.
And McCulley had two guests with him, Tim Conway and Harvey Korman.
Wow. And
McCulley was famous for the fact that he would go to comedy clubs. He never cracked a smile. He never laughed. He was mostly studying.
Notoriously stone-faced.
Yeah. But, so I didn't play to him. I played to Conway and Korman, and Tim Conway literally fell off his chair. Anyway, I then finished the act. I took the candles off, they opened the curtain, and the next magician came on. as I was putting things away, Milt Larson came to me and said, Jim McCulley wants to talk to you. They want to put you on The Tonight Show. And that's how I got The Tonight Show. I ended up getting a personal manager just from that, who ruined my career. She refused to let me take any under 5 lines. And as a result, she said, gee, you can't get work in this town because you kept turning work down for me. Anyway, she said, they're holding auditions for Bozo the Clown at KTLA next week. I can get you in on it. If you get it, you don't have to pay me a commission. And I went, well, I basically told her that I was not interested in her or Bozo the Clown. And I left. And about a few weeks later, I was driving down Sunset past KTLA studios, and I saw a line that stretched for 3 blocks of guys in clown makeup to audition. And I thought, I'm glad I'm not in that line. Now, the only reason why I got very haughty about this was because I knew so many guys that were ex-clowns and jugglers and Venice Beach street entertainers. I knew they'd find what they want, and I didn't have any of those particular skills. I don't do balloon animals. And several months after that audition was over, my wife read an article in the Christian Science Monitor in which the producer, Al Hall, said, the only people that have been auditioning for us are clowns and jugglers and mimes. We need somebody who knows improv comedy, somebody who can ad-lib. And my wife said, you know, they did everything but put your name in the article. Yeah. So I called WGN, and I got the producer, and he said, if you got something on tape, send it to us. Well, the only thing I had on tape was The Tonight Show. So I sent him that. And about 4 weeks went by, and I figured, well, I didn't get it, but I want that tape back. Yeah. And just as I was about to call Chicago, it was Al Hall and said, yes, we'd like you to come in on audition. I said, when? He said, Friday. We just FedExed a plane ticket to you. And a script. Look it over. We're going to record you on Saturday. All right. So I flew to Chicago and came in, and they had a guy putting me in clown makeup in one of Bob Bell's suits. And as I had walked through all of the stuff with Roy Brown and Fraser Thomas, and it seemed pretty good. Roy was a little, distant. He just was sizing me up. But the first thing Roy said to me was, I broke my leg in 3 places. I said, don't go in those places. And he turned to Al Hall and went, so far, so good. And what happened was, they're putting me in the costume. They brought in a makeup artist, a guy named Mike Fink, who had this cigarette with the longest ash in the world, and he's blowing smoke in my face as he's putting the makeup on. He says, I've done clowning myself, but I'm not auditioning for this. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's great. Well, just as they're putting the wig on me, Roy comes in full costume and says, hey, we're in luck. This is the biggest audience we've had yet for an audition. And it's like, what? And it's like, yeah, we've been auditioning the finalists, and you're a finalist. And I went, oh. So I get in there, and the audience is full of parents and kids. And at first I was annoyed, but then I went, I'm in clown makeup. If I mess up, these people will never see me again. So I just chewed up the scenery. I had a great time. And as we're shaking hands with everybody on the way out, a boy of about 12 looks at me, gives me a shot in the shoulder, and goes, you done good. I hope you get the job. Chicago. Anyway, as I'm getting the makeup and costume off, Al comes into the dressing room and he says, we have to make a decision by the end of next week. We'll let you know. 3 weeks go by. I figured I didn't get it. Then, as I'm getting my son ready for school, the phone rings. It's Al Hall. I said, we'd like you to come back on Friday. He says, we just FedExed you a ticket. I said, oh, okay. Is this a callback? He said, no, we're offering you the job. And he hung up. So I said to my wife, how do you feel about moving to Chicago? And she said, yes. And so that was it. That was how I got my audition and in to see the show.
And the rest, as they say, is television history.
Thank you. Oh my goodness.
So again, what a gig.
17 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just absolutely fantastic. What when they finally found the rhythm, how long to get into makeup? How long to get out?
I practiced during the off season, and I got it down to half an hour.
Not bad.
Yeah. So it was not that difficult.
Yeah.
But after 3 weeks of doing the show, we were in rehearsals, and a call comes down from the general manager of WGN. He'd like to see you in his office. I said, all right. So I went up there, and I sit down in a chair directly across from him. He goes, how's it going? I said, great. You having fun? I said, oh, yeah. This is good. He opens up his desk drawer. He pulls out 4 letters that had all been opened and tosses them across the desk towards me. He said, pick one, any one. I said, okay. He said, read it out loud. I said, oh, all right. Dear WGN, we hate the new Bozo. Please bring back Bob Bell. And he went, the other 3 are just as bad. I went, uh-huh. This is great. I said, why? He said, because we expected to get at least between 200 and 300 hate mail letters. That's pretty much how people are. People are so used to one character that they wouldn't accept somebody new. He says, if we got 300, we'd have figured this is terrific. If we got over 500, we might be a little nervous. And if we got over 1,000, you'd be gone. He says, so congratulations. So I was a hit.
That's a very unique way to say attaboy. I mean, there's a logic to it. Yeah. There's a logic to it. Absolutely. I would have just said, like, you know what? You're ahead of the curve, you know? But hey, that's showbiz. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. What point did you feel like you had, I don't want to say find the character, but what did you feel like okay, I feel like I've got this whole figured out now?
I pretty much had it figured out when I came in for the audition.
Okay.
Because I knew what they wanted. The reason why they had so much trouble casting it was that people were used to being individual clowns. Yeah. They weren't used to being a member of a comedy team.
Yes.
They needed someone to be Abbott to Cookie's Costello. They need someone to be Hardy to his Laurel. Yeah. And after I had some friends in LA who got WGN on the satellite, and they had a VCR player back with the tapes that were this big. Yeah. And they would tape Bozo shows, and I'd go over their place, and we would watch them at night. And I went, okay, I see what they're looking for. I see what Bell is doing with Cookie.
Yeah, they're not looking for, they really weren't looking for clowns. They were looking for actors. And they were trying to get, for all intents and purposes, they were trying to get the vibe of the Howdy Doody show.
Exactly.
The whole cast of stable characters.
And you know, and the thing is, Bob Bell and Roy Brown had a great love for vaudeville and burlesque comedy. And so I knew that's what they were doing. And I did that working at the Variety Arts Center in LA. Yeah. And so I got to work with a lot of terrific people. And so, you know, we hit it off right away, and it was a lot of fun working with Roy and Marshall Brodeen, who played Wizzo. Many unusual things happened during the career. Television stations used to buy television shows, you know, old television shows, and run those in the afternoon, like Hogan's Heroes.
The whole syndication, the UHF years.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, GN bought the rights because the movie Untouchables had just come out. There was a Canadian company that produced a syndicated TV version of the Untouchables.
Yes, I remember that.
And they ran it on WGN. One night around 9 o'clock at night, my phone rings. I pick it up. I go, hello. He says, Mr. Dioria, as a proud Italian American, we are sure you are offended by this program they are running on WGN. I said, oh, the Untouchables? Yes. I said, we think you should refuse to go on the air until WGN takes it off. I said, have you seen the show? He says, I refuse to watch it. I said, I've watched it. It stinks. I said, it is badly written, badly acted. It is horrible. I would be surprised if
And
it
this is not the Robert Stack original. This was
No,
a remake
this
that they
was a
did
remake
to
they did out of
crest.
Canada.
Yeah.
Oh, it's sort of like the Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
Everyone was extremely attractive. Even the guy who played Al Capone looked like a model, you know? And he looked Irish. He had red hair.
It was very vogue around that time that if there's a successful movie, they would try to cash in, like Baby Boom. To make it like there was a score of these movies that were one note, one season. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, anyway, you know, I said, I have a contract. I can't do that, you know? And I hung up. Well, then they contacted the general manager, and they said, you are not welcome in the Columbus Day Parade. This set him off. He got so angry, he said, I want a new float. And he got Tribune to pay for a new float the size of this stage. It was like shaped almost like a ship. It had a raised level. It had a front, and on the front, they had a wooden replica of a TV camera and an 8-foot-tall styrofoam cameraman sitting behind it. And we're on State Street in front of Harry Carey's restaurant, getting ready to go on, and as we're going up State Street towards the bridge, there were so many potholes, the thing was going back and forth. And the first thing that happened was the camera fell off the front and smashed into a million pieces. So now we have a styrofoam man sitting on the front of the road like this. Diana Dionisio, who was the head of publicity, it was her first day on the job. She ran over to a vendor, bought 2 Italian flags, and jammed them through the wrists of the guy like this. And
That's actually good thinking.
Yeah. And she says, how does that look? I said, like Lou Gabrazzi in The Godfather. And she says, does it look stupid? I said, no, it looks just stupid enough. Anyway, so now we're going up and we're on the bridge, and I'm looking ahead, and I'm looking at the L tracks that go across State Street. And I'm looking at the cameraman, and I'm looking at the L tracks, and I'm sizing it up, and I said, we're not going to clear the L tracks. And Allison Payne had brought in these guys to build the float, and she got very angry with me, and she says, that's not funny. These men are expert float builders. They know every bridge, every L track, every inch of Chicago. And just as she said that, it caught the styrofoam guy right there in the forehead. And the head goes, ah, snap. So now, the front of the WGN float, the float that is being hated by the entire Italian-American community, has a headless corpse with 2 Italian flags jammed through his wrists as we make our way towards the reviewing stand. And she's screaming, stop the float! She says, get rid of that thing. Well, the guy said, do you know what it costs to sculpt this guy out of start? They took it off and they just laid him down on the float. They then picked up the head and they put that down in the driver's section with the driver. So as we're making our way towards the reviewing stand, this thing is just lying there, rocking with no head. And poor Allison, every time she looked at it, she fell on the floor laughing. Randy Salerno and I had to pick her up, and she'd be okay, but then she'd look at it again. And as we hit the reviewing stand, there was the mayor and members of the Italian-American community. Yeah, what's that? No, that wasn't Harold Washington by that time. Yeah, no. Jane Byrne was before Washington. I think it was Daley. Yeah. But the look on our station manager's face when he saw the float without the camera and with this body lying on and the just look on his, and 3 guys from the Sons of Italy just kind of turn and they look at him. So that is my favorite WGN memory. Yeah.
That would do it. Oh my goodness. What? Yeah. And it's interesting too because WGN. I grew up in Florida, and that was one of the shows that was on the basic cable package. But WOR out of New York and WGN and out of Atlanta, so TBS out of Atlanta, stuff like that. So we were aware of that and some of the, let's watch the news from Chicago. Why? Why not? You know, stuff like that. Everybody else too. And that's how that. When did how did it work with was the Bozo Show actually syndicated, or was it just broadcast out of the station?
In the 1950s, if you had a TV station and you wanted to maintain your FCC license, you had to produce so many hours of news, so many hours of community service, and so many hours of children's programming. In the 50s, if you needed a children's show, you had to produce it yourself.
Yes.
That's why stations all over the United States had spacemen, cowboys, Indian chiefs.
Uncle Nutsy's
Yes,
Clubhouse,
exactly.
all that stuff, yeah.
Larry Harmon, who bought the rights to Bozo, started franchising Bozo shows from Maine to California. And Willard Scott, the weatherman from NBC, he was a Bozo the Clown.
And a Ronald McDonald.
Yeah, Carol Spinner, who was a Big Bird.
Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch.
Yeah.
He was a great friend of ours at this show. He did his...
He was also a Bozo the Clown.
Was he? I did not know that. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, there were Bozo shows all over. Robin Urich, who did the show with me towards the end, his father was a Bozo the Clown in El Paso, Texas. Okay. So, I mean, you know, there was quite a history. But most of them were very cheaply done. A clown, bunch of kids, a couple of games, and show a cartoon. WGN and the Boston Bozo Show had production. I mean, when Bob Bell started the show, they had a 14-piece orchestra. Yeah. You know? They had the big top band. And they didn't just get those guys for the Bozo Show. They were a holdover from the days of radio. Yeah. They worked at WGN downtown. But when radio just became disc jockeys and talk, these guys, because they had a contract, would show up and they would play pinochle until 4:30 in the afternoon and go home. And when the station started, what they did was they said, you know what? We're going to move you guys from radio to television. And GN in the 50s produced a lot of live musical shows. They had a nightclub show, they had a country and western show, and these guys were great musicians, and they did it all. By the time I came along, it was a very elderly accordion player, a drummer, and a trumpet player. And they ended up retiring them my third year in, and they said, you can only get one musician. And we were lucky because we got Andy Matran, who, in my opinion, saved the show. He was a brilliant musician. He played a MIDI. He could make that thing sound like a full orchestra. So he did a lot of terrific stuff for the show. We were very lucky to have him.
Wow. So, were you the Bozo that ran for president?
No.
Okay.
No, that was Larry Harmon.
Okay.
Larry Harmon would do that every couple of years or so.
Okay, yeah. Because I want to say around 88, I think.
Yeah.
You were, I vaguely had that memory. Let's talk about your animation work, because you've had some pretty good runs in that.
When I was living in California before Bozo, I worked with some friends. We did looping for a lot of things, foreign films, mostly.
Your karate, my karate is better than your karate.
That stuff. There was a Spanish version of the Three Musketeers called the Three Musketeers, where they were dogs, and I didn't get any of the main characters. But then they didn't know what to do, and they had to recast this one actor who got an acting job in San Francisco, and they had me do Cardinal Richelieu. But Cardinal Richelieu did not do that much. So they would have me do like people that would come to petition the king. You know, one day I was a pig who was a baker, or I was a goat who was a rope maker, and I did all these different characters. And one day I get this panicked call. There's an episode where all the people that petition the king show up. And it was like, oh my God. And they had to find these things so I could remember what voice I did for each one. But that was it. It was called Inner Sound. It was on Sunset Boulevard, across from where Tower Records used to be.
Was that the place that had the emergency erase button when you
Yes.
walked in? I've heard legends of this place.
Yeah.
This is a place that, for reasons that have never been explained, in the lobby, there was this emergency button. You would push it like a fire alarm, and whatever was on tape and being recorded would be erased. And no, and all the voice actors that were there, we never knew why.
Yeah.
We never knew what was going on when we weren't there. We were doing animation and stuff this way. We never found out what else was going on.
Well, the interesting thing is, we would record these cartoons. We would show up at 11 o'clock at night, and we would work until 6 in the morning. But from 9 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night, they were bringing in Spanish-speaking cast members to redub Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, all of those things, to be shipped out to Mexico and South America. So yeah, that was wild stuff, and I
¿Dónde está Fonzie?
exactly. But but you know,
But his
that
work
was-
is work.
Yeah. And I worked with a number of great people. And then after I came back to LA after Bozo was canceled, I looked them up. And now, instead of just being actors, many of them were directors. Hot dog. It's not what you know, boys and girls. It's who you know. And
Be
these guys-
nice to all your peers
Right.
in the performing world.
And so they cast me in a number of things. We did the Mr. Men show, which was a very famous British show based on a bunch of children's books. And they came to do the animation in the United States. And they were holding auditions, and they said, do you have something, what next character is Mr. Rude? Do you have something? And I looked at the copy, and I went, hello, my name is Mr. Rude. Who are you? I did a French accent. The Brits went crazy. They loved it. So I got that character. And I also, let's see, I did Mr. Scatterbrain, which was easy because I just did Ed Wynn. And they loved that one. And they loved that one because they considered that quintessentially American. Yeah. And then I was Mr. Persnickety. We were then corrected and informed that it was pronounced Mr. Pernickety. Yes. Well, anyway, we had a great cast. We did all of the stuff. They aired in the States. When they took the stuff back to England, they recast all of the voices except for Mr. Rude and Mr. Scatterbrain. So that was pretty cool.
Not bad at all. And like I said, you did a fair amount on Tom and Jerry.
Yes. What happened was Warner Brothers purchased the entire cartoon library from MGM, which was all of the Tom and Jerry's and Screwy Squirrels and all of those things.
Yep.
They also bought the entire Hanna-Barbera library, from Huckleberry Hound to Johnny Quest. And the rule is, if you own this stuff, in order to maintain the copyright, you have to produce something.
Yes.
So they produced a whole series of Tom and Jerry. We did about 5 years of those.
Yeah.
And not only did we get all of the Tom and Jerry characters, but they brought in Screwy Squirrel and Droopy and many other of the characters just so that they could say, we got it on file.
Yeah, they kept it in their own bubble. So like
Yeah.
they do stuff with the Hanna-Barberas, but they tend to keep you still don't see like Tom and Jerry and Yogi Bear.
No.
You know, you haven't seen that yet, I'm sure.
Not
yeah.
yet. However, they are doing some things where they are doing crossovers where some of the Hanna-Barbera characters are crossing over into other things. Like they did one thing where people were it was like a mystery thing, and they were bringing in characters like Peter Potamus or Wally Gator or Huckleberry Hound, just to get them in there.
Basically just like, hey, remember this character?
Yeah.
Just updating it. And stuff. I think it's every 7 years.
Yeah.
They have to do something with them, and I think it could be published too. But they're just like, well, let's get out.
3 more years, I'm waiting for the fact that Tom and Jerry will be back.
No, absolutely. So,
Those are some great residuals.
indeed. What's the best memory you've taken from this crazy ride you've been on?
I met so many interesting people. When I was working at the Variety Arts Center, we did a recreation. We did like the rooftop garden show for the Ziegfeld Follies of 1917. We had a young man who did the most incredible dead-on imitation of Eddie Cantor you ever saw. Another fellow did Will Rogers. I did in full makeup. I did the W.C. Fields temperance lecture. And after the thing was over, I was about to get out of makeup, and Milt comes running to me and says, Cary Grant was downstairs in the big theater, and we want to bring him up for drinks, but we don't want him to come up in the regular elevator. He'll get mobbed. Take the freight elevator down and bring him up through the kitchen. I said, he says, don't worry about how you're dressed, just go. So I take this rickety old freight elevator down to the alleyway, and there's Cary Grant with his wife, and he's having a cigarette, and he turns and he looks at me, and he goes, my God, Bill Fields as I live and breathe. And he got in the elevator, and for the entire ride up, he told me stories how he belonged to a group called the High Hatters Club. They would meet at Chasen's restaurant in Beverly Hills. It would be him, Gene Fowler, W.C. Fields, John Barrymore, you know? And they would drink till 5 in the morning until the limos came and took them to their respective studios. And he turned to me and he said, after 3 weeks of this, I told Bill Fields I have to quit. And Bill Fields called me a sissy. And when I got married, my son was 3, and he's my stepson. And my wife was closing out her house, so I used to take him to work with me. And he had a little tuxedo, so he was my mini-me. Oh, wow. And I brought him up to the cocktail lounge to just color while I made sure some of the doors were locked. And when I came up, he was missing. Oh, God, I've been married less than a week, and I've lost her son. All of a sudden, I hear laughter coming from the bar, and all the cocktail waitresses are standing in a circle. And there's my son in the middle, nose to nose with Billy Barty. And he's so excited. Brendan was 3 at the time, and he looked at me and he
If you don't know
smiled.
who Billy Barty is, he was the
Yeah.
little person from basically the 60s to
from the
the
30s.
90s, from the 30s. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
one of the Mergel Munchkins, but for his whole life, pretty much in the 70s and 80s, when a
Yeah.
role required a dwarf for a little person,
Dr.
it was,
Shrinker.
yeah. Dr. Shrinker, yeah.
Yeah.
He was, yeah. Put it this way, we bring a picture of him, you say, oh, yeah, him.
He was in, he played the old wizard in
Willow.
Willow.
Yes.
Right, okay.
The bones tell me nothing.
Very good. Well, anyway, my son looks at me and he goes, he's a man, Daddy. He's a little man and he's as big as me. And I'm thinking, oh, God. So I get down and I say, yes, this is Mr. Barty. He's a very famous actor. And then I realized, does it offend you to have me get on my knees to talk to you? He says, no, it offends me when people pick me up to talk to me. He says, by the way, it's a nice suit on the kid. What do you plan on doing with it when he outgrows it? But yeah, that was it. Wow. My son slept with Drew Barrymore. This is no idle brag. Her father, John Drew Barrymore, was doing a play. He was doing the I Hate Shakespeare play, in which he plays Barrymore. And I go backstage to make sure everything's in order, and there's a pile of coats, and there is a beautiful little 3-year-old girl sleeping on a pile of coats. And I say, whose kid is this? And Barrymore says, it's my daughter's. Is there a problem? I said, no, it's a concrete floor. I said, I have a couch in my office. My son is asleep on one end. You know, he was the same age as Drew Barrymore. I said, you can put her on the other end. I look in on the kid regularly. He said, thank you. So Drew Barrymore was on one end of the couch. Brendan was on the other. And at the end of the evening, John Drew Barrymore and I rode down the elevator together with our 3-year-olds over our shoulders.
That's adorable.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. All right, we got time, so let's take some questions. All right, let's go to Ben Grimm over here. I'll bring him
Okay.
to you. Oh, good. Oh, good. All right. So what was your name?
Ben Grimm, I suppose.
Come on. Don't be that guy. Come on. What's your first name?
I go by Chadwell. It's my last name. pretty much a staple of the show was Bozo would challenge Cookie to some type of like challenge or
A fair
riddle,
and
etc.
square.
And the thing is, this is the days before the internet, and like there's only so many books that are like physically around. How do you like fill up every single show? We got one, and it's new, and it's like at least a stumper for the kids watching, if not their parents, and sometimes their parents like.
Those were basically bar bets. It's like, I can say the alphabet backwards. No, you can't. Yes, I can. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. So, things like that. And that's basically what they were. They were just simple bits. Sometimes, though, Bob Bell screwed up and Cookie got to lead the Grand March. And he was a sneaky little son of a gun. He would do things purposely to throw you off. And so, yes, I screwed up, and he got to lead the Grand March. So, yeah. But that was basically it. They were old bar bets.
Fair. Good one. Thank you. Yeah, what was your name again?
Brian.
What you got, Brian?
This is probably an easy question. Maybe it's a dumb question. Do you have a book? And if not, can you write a book, please?
I'm going to be putting together a book of the stories. I did write a book of basically clown bits that I wrote for the Bozo Show, which did not sell very well. So you might find one on eBay that someone wants to get rid of cheap.
Oh my goodness, that's good.
But thank you for saying that.
No problem.
My
Oh, yeah.
wife keeps telling me I need to write a book.
Okay, here, I'll get you. So, hi, what's your name?
Jen Burrow. I'm curious, did you study clowning specifically in addition to improv?
Nope. I had friends who attended the clown college in Florida. One of my friends was a classmate at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York. His name is Marty Robinson. He is Mr. Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street, and he designed the man-eating plant for Little Shop of Horrors. But he's one of the people I know who went to the clown college. Robin Urich, who played Rusty the Handyman, he taught at the clown college. But I have absolutely no clowning experience, to which I have a story. I was at the auto show, and I was there just to sign autographs and things. And an elderly woman comes up with her grandson. She goes, "Oh, so Mr. Clown," she says, "are you gonna do balloon animals for the children?" I said, I don't do that. She goes, "Ah." She says, "Juggle. Are you gonna juggle for the children?" I don't know how to juggle. She goes, "Magic tricks, maybe." I said, No, I don't. She says, "You know, sweetheart, you're not much of a clown."
There you go. Cool, thank you. And yeah. Hey, what's your name?
My name is Alex. How you doing, Mr. Dari? I have a question. My question is, can you talk to me about your rapport and your relationship with the other cast member and the crew? I'd like to know a little bit more detail about that.
Okay. Well, Roy Brown and I became very good friends right away because we had a lot in common in regard to the fact that we both appreciated the same kind of comedy. Marshall Brodeen, who played Wizzo, had a boat on Fox Lake, and in the summer, during the off-season, we would all just sit there and would throw jokes and ideas back and forth to help get us ready for the next season. So yes, I had a wonderful working relationship with everybody from the show.
Cool. Me too. We're just about out of time. Anything on the horizon? Anything got going on? Yeah.
At present, right now, I do have a friend, Mark Risley, who is a director who's directed me in Yokai Watch and several other things. He has 2 new projects that he is working on, and I'm hoping to hear from him shortly about a couple of parts. So we'll see.
Stay tuned. All that
Yeah.
stuff. Got any social media platforms?
No, not yet. I'm going to.
Okay. They're it's not as dark as you've heard.
No.
Me too. And one final question: would you like to take a picture with this wonderful audience?
I would love to.
All right, everybody. Here's what we do. If you haven't done this already, come on forward towards the stage, not on the stage, towards the stage. Take a picture of a guest and all of you.